But inshallah, I've started the recording. Sidi Yunus, make dua for us.
فاتحة. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم. اللهم ربنا زدنا علما وارزقنا فهما وزدنا بالصالحين. اللهم افتح لنا فتوح العارفين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وبارك وسلم. ربنا تقبل منا في سر أسرار سورة الفاتحة.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وأصحابه وبارك وسلم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. We're starting a new topic tonight. It's test of great blessings. Now, this is such a vast topic that it can take a lot longer, so there will be gaps as we move through the topic that you will probably say, yeah, we could have added this, we could have added that, we could have added a lot of things, but we're going to try and do justice to the topic by linking all our previous discussions and areas that we've covered. We're going to try and incorporate that. At the end of the day, our task is to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala better and to increase our understanding of Tawheed. That's the purpose. I don't have other objectives. I'm not a alim, I'm not a sheikh or a imam. I am a scholar of Tawheed. And I hope, inshallah, that we will be able to use this as a topic to increase our understanding of Tawheed. Now, some of the introductory things that we're going to do might sound fairly obvious, but I felt it would be important for us to start right at the beginning, even if some of it might be rather obvious. So let's then go to the first slide. Tests are great blessings. Now, the understanding of this will probably not be apparent immediately, that tests are in fact great blessings. The first thing to mention and to start off, that difficulties, tests, challenges, crises, calamities, those awkward things that happen in our lives, they are an integral part of our life, of our lives, of all our lives. No one is left out. No human being is left out of that equation. These things will happen to all people, whether they are Muslim or not Muslim, whether they are very pious people or whether they are sinners, regardless of who they are. Tests form a major part and an integral part of all our lives. It's not something that one can avoid or escape. And if we had any doubt about where does this fit in, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it very clear to us in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, chapter 2, verse 155, we will certainly test you with something of fear, hunger, loss of wealth, lives, fruits, but give glad tidings to the persevering and patient. This comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We will certainly test you. That's a guarantee. So let's take that as something that is not something that we need to say, well, will it apply to me or does it apply to that person? It applies to everyone. And the categories that's listed here, fear, hunger, and so on, are only to give us a glimpse of what everything means. Everyone will be tested with everything that's dear to them or important to them. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives glad tidings to the persevering and the patient. Patient, we have an idea about what's patient. Persevering can be described as steadfast, persistent, unwavering, unswerving, determined. In other words, what we are being told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you are steadfast, unwavering, and patient, and you're determined to stick to those things that you are ordered to do, then there is a great reward ahead for you. The nature of the reward we will speak about as we move through the sessions. Now, when we're confronted with these hardships, then we reach a point where we say it's getting too much now, and you can't cope with it. You're completely and utterly frustrated, depressed. You become desperate for a solution. And often when we are confronted with these difficulties, we don't know where the answer is going to come from. We can't see the solution. And that makes us even more depressed, more desperate. In fact, it continues up to the point where people, and you hear people say this, I've heard it, you've heard it. Oh Allah, I can't anymore. When is it going to stop? When is it going to end? I've reached the end of my ability. Because it's getting to a point where you believe you can't continue anymore. It's now going to overwhelm you and overtake you. We'll come back to that one, but let's just reflect on what the Quran says in chapter 29, verse 2. Do people think that they will be left alone because they say we believe and will not be tested? What this particular verse says is, in case for some reason or other we didn't fully understand or come across the first verse, Allah repeats it now in another verse to confirm whether you are a Muslim or a non-Muslim, you're going to be tested. And not only will everyone be tested, but you'll even be tested while you are doing something good. You're not doing anything wrong. You're carrying out the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah instructed you to do something and you're doing it. You're going for Hajj, or you're on the way to deliver food to the needy, and you get a puncture and things happen. So the test and the difficulties that we are going to go through are not dependent on what we are busy with. That Allah will determine where and how it happens. So doing good doesn't necessarily mean because you are doing good, you are not going to be tested. Remember that. And in fact, when it happens while you are doing good, let this be a reminder that tests are part of life. It will come whether you are doing good or whether you are doing bad. Now, it can really rattle you to such an extent where you go back to the drawing board now and you say, and now you might start questioning. I'm doing the right things. I'm doing what Allah has ordered me. But I am being tested so severely. You become doubtful about your belief. You become doubtful about Allah. You don't believe correctly anymore, and that foundation of your belief is shaken to such an extent that it becomes scary. So scary that you might even find yourself becoming a disbeliever. Just to say also that don't look at other people. Don't look at other people, whether they are tested or not tested, whether they are tested as severely as you are, or don't look at them and compare yourself to them and say, you're a better person. You're at least trying to do some good things. And they're non-believers or disbelievers or atheists or the biggest sinners. And you want to compare yourself to them. Everyone is going to be tested differently. Remember that. And not to the same extent, because everyone's personal conditions differs. Their conditions are not the same as yours, no matter how similar it might appear. And it's not going to only be those matters that I've listed here on the slide, but it can be inside the home, outside the home. It could be with relationships in the workplace, but tests are going to come. If you've not been tested yet in certain areas, prepare for it so that you know, don't become complacent. The other thing almost becomes depressing. When you overcome this crisis, then you can almost guarantee that the next crisis will follow. It doesn't mean that because you've overcome this crisis, now you're done with it. Now you're into your good space and it will continue until you die. It will just take another form, but the one hardship will follow the other. The one test will follow the other. It just takes a different form. Now, it might take a very, create a very depressing and bleak picture. Now, what are our lives then about? Why are we here on this planet Earth? Why did Allah create us if we have to go through all of these things and there's a guarantee that we're going to be tested right till the end of what we are able to bear? And not only once, but it's going to continue right until we die. When you start going through those thoughts, then the consequence of it negatively impacting on your iman and weakening your iman, it becomes very, very real. Especially when you're going through difficulty. People claim they have iman. This is the time when you're going through these deep calamities and crises and difficulties. Do you have iman? That's the question that you must now answer. How strong is your iman? Yes, it paints a very bleak and negative picture. So does it mean that our lives will only be made up of different types of hardships from the beginning till the end? And is every difficulty that you encounter, is that the will of Allah? Is it the will of Allah that every single thing that you are going through, that is the will of Allah? Allah decreed it like that. Is it so? And will we be free from these difficulties and tests at any point whilst we're on this dunya? Or is it just going to continue? I want to just pause quickly there, quickly, not long, to hear. Will our lives consist of tests throughout? And is it the will of Allah? I'm opening up the floor quickly.
Assalamu alaikum, Salie.
Wa alaikum
Assalamu
salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
On that point, I think that when it comes to being tested, it's very clear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test us. And also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises us after every difficulty, He will come ease. So ultimately, the nature of the dunya is a nature of trial and struggle and test. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring a relief and will bring ease thereafter. But in order to be deserving of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's gifts and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure and the closeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and gaining Jannah and all of the other things that we want to attain on that spiritual level, being close to Allah, we need to be refined like a piece of iron in the fire, which can only be forged when it's being heated up. And that's basically what those trials and tests are doing, forging us into something that is more pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Okay.
I would say.
Is it the will of Allah, every difficulty that we encounter?
It is the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it is also as a result of the choices that we have made, which is also part of the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Anyone else want to quickly come in? Very good answer, Muhammad Hasir. Okay, yes?
Yes, Brother Saleh. It's definitely the will of Allah, because nothing can happen outside of His will. Nothing can
Subhanallah.
override His will. Nothing can override His will. And it is
Subhanallah.
also linked.
Sorry, Sidi Yunus. Let me press pause there. It's such a profound point that I don't think we must just quickly go past that. Every single thing that happens in creation is the will of Allah. Everything that happens in the world, in creation, is the will of Allah. Because our Tawheed tells us nothing can happen which is not the will of Allah. Please remember that. I might re-emphasize the point, but please continue, Sidi Yunus.
Yes, so the second link is the fact that Allah's knowledge is so encompassing that He already knows the outcomes and why He allows certain things to happen. But we don't see that. We don't have that foresight. So through His wisdom, subhanahu wa ta'ala, He allows certain things to happen because He knows what the outcome will be. And in another verse, where Allah says that perhaps we see something as being bad, but yet it is good for us. And sometimes we see things as something that might be good, but in the reality, it's bad for us. So it's almost as if this realm in the dunya is covered in opposites, if I can put it that way.
Okay. I think you guys have covered the questions very well. Nothing happens ever that is outside the will of Allah. Because if we say something can happen which is not the will of Allah, then it means that there is something out there that can be determined by someone else or something else, which is not directly under Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's control. A very crucial point where we make our decisions and it influences what happens to us is a discussion that we can have on another time. But remember that point that nothing can happen which is outside the will of Allah. Of course, our choices come into the equation, but we're going to become distracted if we go too deep into that point. Okay, so we're going to move on now. You didn't say it, but I will say it. No one will ever be free from tests and difficulties. No one. Right up until the end, everyone will be tested. The nature of the test will change, but you will be tested. Now, as we said earlier, it paints a very bleak picture of what our lives are about. It's just difficulties and struggle and pain and suffering. But that sketches the background. Now we're going to move on from there, inshallah. To emphasize this point that life is about struggle, a man came to the Prophet and said, "Oh Messenger, by Allah, I love you." It's a hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Think about what you are saying." The man repeated thrice, "I swear by Allah that I love you." The Prophet said, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, "If you love me, you should be ready for acute poverty, because poverty comes to those who love me faster than a flood flowing towards its destination." Then there's a second hadith. If Allah intends good for someone, Allah, the Creator, the Almighty, intends good for you, then He afflicts that person with trials. Whoever is patient has the reward of patience, and whoever is impatient has the fault of impatience. These hadith just emphasize that these difficulties. But what we must understand here is that the second hadith says that if Allah intends good for you, it's almost Allah intends good for you, but Allah punishes you. It could appear like that. Afflicts you with difficulties and hardships and pain and suffering. But if you are patient, you will get the reward of patience. And what is the reward of patience? Allah speaks in the Quran, only those who are patient shall receive their rewards in full, without reckoning, without hisab, without limit, calculation, and estimation. In other words, normally a deed, a good deed, or a bad deed is given an amount. That is worth so much. You will be punished severely for that. Here Allah doesn't say how much. It says without limit. If you are truly patient, and what is it in essence that we have to be patient about? The decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, what is the decree of Allah? The decree of Allah is what Allah has determined for you in your life. That within which you have to live has been determined, designed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in such a way to test you. And if you pass the test and you are satisfied and patient with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and your circumstances and your difficulties, then the reward, and the reward with Allah is without limit. In other words, there's no reward that can be compared to that, even if we were to use worldly examples. Some people in some hadith and other explanations, people talk about castles and couches of gold and silver and rubies and silk and all of those things. These are so that we can make a connection between the things that we find to be valuable and sought after, so that we can make a connection. But there's no connection between what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the benefit and the reward is such that you can't actually describe it. Allah knows what we can endure because Allah created us. Allah is the creator of your physical being. Allah knows you got a heart problem because Allah created your heart problem. Allah knows you've got weak eyes. Allah created that. Allah is fully aware of every condition within your body, but also within your circumstances. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, I was going to use husband and wife example, bad example, I will get hit over the knuckles. Let's use a mother and child example. If Allah, for example, gave you a child that has a learning ability or is autistic or something, everything that has to do with that condition of that child and how that impacts on you as a parent is known by Allah. Allah designed it like that. What we must find out is there's a test in that we have to pass through. What is it that you are missing? Why are you not able to overcome this test? Doesn't mean the test is going to be, there's going to be no more tests, but that one might be solved. If you can get to the point where you don't just accept there's a difficulty, you throw your hands up in the air and you complain. You actually have to look at what Allah has created for you, because Allah knows exactly the detail of everything within your life and your surroundings and your circumstances and your environment. Now, Allah doesn't benefit from that. Nothing we can do, good or bad, benefits Allah. So if we suffer and we go through trauma, there's actually a hidden benefit that we are totally unaware of. Yeah, but I can't see the benefit. Can be one response. I just feel the pain. I can't see the benefit and it's getting too much for me. If you change your approach and your attitude, that there is a hidden benefit in here. This is actually that Allah is giving to me, but I can't see that it's beneficial for me. I just want to digress for just half a minute. When I was a lot younger, about half my age, I had a burst ulcer, and they had to cut away a piece of my stomach. In those days, they didn't treat ulcers with what you call ultrasound, and they could sort it out from the outside the body. In those days, they actually had to cut to remove the ulcer, but it was so deep that they had to actually cut away a piece of my stomach. I nearly died on the operating table because I at the same time contracted pneumonia, and my temperature went so high I nearly died. if they didn't cut, I wouldn't have gone through that trauma of almost dying and all that pain. But after I left there, the ulcer was no more there. I didn't have an ulcer anymore. It's like a person who goes for a uh, heart operation, triple bypass. Oh, this man went for a triple bypass. And you come to him afterwards and you say, oh, I'm sorry, and you apologize. He almost died because of the triple bypass. If he didn't have the triple bypass, he would have died. But now that they've bypassed the area that was blocking the flow of the blood to the heart, the man is healthy now. You only see the benefit afterwards, sometimes. Most of the time, we don't see it and we complain. But there is a benefit in every single hardship and difficulty. We must try and extract what the potential benefit is and work towards achieving that. It's almost as if Sidi Yunus looked at my slides, and I can tell you he didn't. Our lives are made up of opposites. Almost every single thing in our life has opposites in it. It actually starts with belief and disbelief. You can start there, or it can start with existence and non-existence. And then you can go through. I'm not even going to read all of this that we showing on the slide. But every single aspect of your life, there's an opposite to it. Life is made up of that. Life is not straight, black or white. It's a mixture. And in between all of these opposites, what stands between all of these opposites? Choice. Not all of it. Life and death probably is a bit outside our thing, but most of the time, we're going to be confronted with opposites in our life. Some due to our own making, and others that's outside our control. But we're going to be confronted with the opposites. They form an integral part of our lives. And therefore, if you're unsure about something, then go to the opposite of it. To use an example, what example can I use now? Are you a miser? No, I'm not a miser. What's the opposite of being a miser? Being charitable. Are you charitable? Now, the question becomes a bit more clear, because you are trying to find the answer by looking at the opposite. The opposite often assists one to give the correct idea of what evades you when you are busy with something that's not easy to answer one way or the other. Which brings us to the question that human beings, and of course we say jinn, are the only ones who have been given free will and choice. Everything else in creation operates on the basis of compulsion. Whether it's animate or inanimate, whether it's alive or not, they are created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to serve a particular function, and they have no choice but to carry out that function. They can't go outside of what they've been created for. Therefore, they do what they have to do. Even the dog and the pig, Allah created them like that. Let's not go there. But the point is, they carry out and they're obedient to the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We, of course, know we are confronted with these opposites, and where we're going to land up in the akhirah is going to be determined by the choices we make. We, not the things in our environment. We are going to personally have to. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us glad tidings. And when I said the previous verses where we are guaranteed that we're going to be tested, as I just show it again to remind you, yes, maybe. As a reminder, we will certainly test you with all these things that's mentioned. This Allah speaks to us directly in the Quran. Comes from no one else. Comes from Allah speaking to you and to me to say you are going to be tested with most of the things that's dear to you. And Allah also says, don't think because you say you believe that you're not going to be tested. That's a given. Where was I? And we make the point here that even the Salihin, the Awliya, the prophets, they're all going to be included in these difficulties and tests. But comes the first glimmer of light. Our lives are not going to be a permanent life of unease, discomfort, hardships, nor is it going to be a permanent case of being in comfort and luxury and happiness and joy. These two things will follow one another like the seasons. Immediately after summer, prepare for the next season. After winter, there will be another season, and that seasons gives us a taste of what life will be about. It's seasonal. One condition will follow the other. You're never going to be in a permanent state of no test or in a permanent state of joy. Because Allah says, guarantee after difficulty comes ease. So no matter how difficult it is, that particular test that you are enduring, after difficulty comes ease. Who can guarantee this? Only Allah. Allah is the creator of the difficulty, and Allah is the creator of the things that will ease the difficulty. Then Allah, another glimpse. Alhamdulillah. So our depression that we had, that things are just going to be a test all the time from one moment to the other. Yeah, the Lord of the worlds, the owner of everything, the one in whose hands the entire universe, the entire creation, the multiverse, the seven samawat, the kursi, the arsh, everything belongs to the one who's speaking to us. On no soul doth Allah place a burden greater than it can bear. So when you say you can't, maybe you can't more after that, but what you are experiencing, you certainly have been created. Allah is your creator. Allah knows you can bear that. Allah's not going to place it beyond that point where you totally collapse. It's not going to be like the proverbial or the proverb, the last straw that broke the camel's back. That last straw won't be put on the camel's back. Let me just see what this. So there's a guarantee. There's going to come ease, no matter how difficult it appears now. and that is never ending. But Allah guarantees after that will come ease, and it's not going to be too much for you to bear. So Allah knows you can bear it. That's why, in fact, you've been tested with that. But we must just prepare ourselves. So now the difficulty is eased. And you're comfortable now. Oh, alhamdulillah. Whew, I didn't know I was going to get this side of that problem. Don't go and become heedless and complacent. Know that there are other tests that's going to follow. There will be other tests. There must be other tests, because that is the nature of how life is going to be. Now, we could stop there, and it wouldn't really satisfy us, because we only see the tests now. Where's the blessings that the title says? Wait a bit. Wait a bit. Inshallah, we'll come to that. Maybe if we ask, why are we tested? Why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing us? I'm quickly going to do the slide, and then we're going to stop there, because I don't think we will be able to go through this full section of why we are tested, but let me do the slide while we have a bit of time. Allah tests us. Various tests to determine how you believe. So different people believe differently. Their iman or their taqwa or their aqidah or their knowledge about Allah is not the same. So their faith is different, their belief is different. But each one's faith, Allah knows what is your ability and capacity to understand certain things and to acquire knowledge of whatever, up to there. You have been created to go up to that point, and you have been created to go up to that point. Allah knows that. Now Allah wants to test your faith and creates the conditions and circumstances around that. Is hardship and test a form of punishment? Quickly, is it a form of punishment? Can one, let's hear?
The quick answer
No.
in my case, I would say no.
You would say no? Warda?
Definitely not. I
Okay.
think hardship is opening up potential for us, which often, if we're in our comfort zone, we miss it completely.
Okay. Let's go on. I'm not going to give the answer. I won't give the answer now. Wait for next week. Ta-ta, ta-ta. And now, wait for next week. My habits wat uitkom hier. Forgive me. Allah says in the Quran, chapter 67, verse 2, you created life and death to test you. Which of you are best indeed? And he is the exalted in might, the forgiving. The reason, according to this verse, who are the best indeed? Now, what does best indeed mean? Because Allah gives us now. The test is for what purpose? This is the purpose. Allah says so himself. Who is best indeed? So we must understand, what does best indeed mean? What does it mean? Best indeed, we've got an obligation towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as our creator. And Allah has commanded us to do certain things. and to stay away from other things. There are certain things that's compulsory, and there are certain things that Allah will be pleased with, but it's not compulsory. The optional nafil things. Now we are placed in conditions where those possibilities exist. You must now demonstrate as whether you pass the test. The first thing you're going to be tested, what is your relationship with your Rabb? What is your relationship with Allah? Do you say you just believe? What effort have you made to really know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Do you know His sifat? When you say Allah is all seeing, Allah's all seeing, Allah can see everything. Do you understand it? Do you understand it to the point that Allah has given you the capacity to understand it? Maybe you understand it as well as the person next to you, but Allah gave you a capacity to understand all seeing beyond what that person is understanding. That person may have been given only so much, and that's good enough for that person. But for you, Allah gave you the capacity to understand it beyond that. So we've covered some of these things when we dealt with the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And now we think we know. We can describe all seeing, all hearing, all powerful, all knowledgeable. No, I understand it now. You understand nothing, I understand nothing, because Allah's perfection is limitless. If you talk about Allah, you don't even have a glimpse. You don't even have a glimpse of what these sifat and names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means. So never ever say you know when you're talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now Allah's given you the ability to go far beyond where you are now. And that is part of what you're going to be tested on. If you just sat back and say, no, okay, I understand that. What next? In the meantime, you could have used that as a stepping stone to get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala better. And you missed the opportunity. Now, when these terrible things happen in our life, and we feel the pain, the physical pain, the emotional pain, the hardship, the difficulty, then one of the ways that Allah is going to test your relationship with Allah is to see what is your response to that difficulty. And there's the opposites coming in here. Here comes the two, not two, but the opposites. The one that we described, people display total anger, dissatisfaction. Oh man, I'm tired of all the struggle and this hardship, man. Allah can't test me. So you on the verge of becoming kufr. The way you are displaying your dissatisfaction and unhappiness with that particular difficulty or hardship. Or were you of the fortunate people who displayed patience with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Now the elite of the elite, the people who have really made major progress in their relationship with Allah are the knowers of Allah, the awliya and the prophets. When they encounter a difficulty, they express happiness and joy. Look how far we are. You knock your head, and the blood is pouring out of your head. The furthest thing from your You will quickly say, Alhamdulillah, oh, it could have been my neck, but it's only my head that's bleeding. Alhamdulillah, by the way you say it, but you're more worried about this. You're not expressing happiness and joy, or you lose your car, or it's written off, or you're in an accident, or you lose your house. The true elect of the elect, the special slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're happy. Subhanallah, it sounds like a fairy tale. They're happy when it happens. When calamity strikes, they're happy. Not only because they know Allah is in control, but they actually truly accept the will of Allah. And if Allah has willed that for them to be in that situation where they're confronted with that calamity, then they know there's a benefit in it, even if they can't see it. So our relationship with our Rabb and our attitude and our response is the first test. And that is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, which of you are best indeed? Of course, it goes on, but I have, let me just see, I've reached the end of that slide. And yeah, we're going to end off on that one for now. And I'm going to conclude on that one, on the slide, on that point, and ponder on these things, ponder on it. Go over these slides on your own and ask yourself, where are you in relation to all of these things? Are these the questions that you ask and so on? And what is it that you are struggling with when you're actually confronted with these difficulties? So alhamdulillah, we've reached the end of the formal session, and I'm going to just open up the floor quickly for a round of either comments or questions, either. The floor is open.
Mr. Salie,
Yes, Sidi Yunus.
the question about these trials and tribulations is about punishment. And I think it's a personal journey, because everyone is tested differently. And because everyone's iman is also different, it depends on through which lenses are we looking at. In the case of perhaps a sinner who now finds these difficulties and he sees it as a punishment, there's also that aspect of remorse, and then tawbah, turning back to Allah, can be inspirational for him, and that is good for him. In the case of a pious slave, for example, even those trials and tribulations is a blessing, because in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, we see that even the prick of a thorn, and that concept can be seen as a punishment because we're getting hurt, painful. In it, it is a means of expiation of our sins. And then the question arises, so until we walk on this dunya free of sin, so what happens once a purification then happens? Just very quickly, once all those sins are removed, he's walking on the dunya cleansed, and he still endures trials and tribulations. At that point, it is Allah causing elevation, spiritual elevation. So again, in both scenarios, the sinner and the pious, both of those trials and tribulations is good for them. And that is why it's not a form of punishment per se.
Okay, shukran. You've covered what we're going to come to. You've covered some aspects of hardships, punishment or not, and how should it be viewed. It's both yes and no, or maybe not. It's not a straightforward answer of yes or no. You've given some of the explanations, we're going to come to in a little bit more detail during the rest of the session, inshallah. But shukran for those comments, Sidi Yunus. Anyone else? Is anyone else?
Bafita Salie, this one other aspect.
Okay.
I think when it comes to this, the concept is how do we view Allah? And I think if we keep reminding ourselves that Allah is Al-Wadud, He's the most loving, Allah is Al-Latif, the most gentle, I think that brings some good thoughts about Allah, and that should be a means of our motivation.
Yes, Sidi Yunus, for somebody who is spiritually sound, who is in a good space, that will work. I can tell you now, for the people who are, they're not great believers, they're not of the awliya, they're ordinary, everyday people. They're going to be put out of the house tomorrow. You say to a person like that, remember Allah's name, the all merciful, the all loving, and all of that. How you think that is going to assist them? So it depends who you're speaking to. Yes, of course, there are some people, just the mention of the name is enough for them to get into a different space, in a different frame of mind. But for the average person, we're going to give them something that they can hang on to, and practically assist them so that they can deal with their current problem, this current pain, you know. Now it's not, we're not saying that we're going to get to the to all the solutions, but yes, those things will help for people like some of the people who are part of this group. Yes, mention that, you remind yourself that Allah is the all-loving, Al-Wadud. Might be enough. For other people, it might not be. Okay, so I take it there are no more comments then. All right, let me end off on this note and say this is a very, very tough topic. It can test our iman to the extreme. And what we are going to try and do at the end of this is try and have a better understanding of our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah is the one that creates the conditions that gives rise to these hardships and difficulties. If we understand why Allah is doing it, if we understand why Allah is doing it, now we can never understand why does Allah do anything. We can never understand that. We can assume, or we can extract or read from certain things that Allah tells us in the Quran, or that Rasulullah gives in the Hadith to assist us as to why certain things are being done in the way that they are done. And once we know that, then maybe inshallah, a difficulty is only a difficulty in the first place because we see it as a difficulty. If you see the difficulty as a blessing, immediately then the difficulty is a blessing. It's not a difficulty. Whether the blood is pouring out of your head and they cannot do what they want, you see it as a blessing, you laugh. It's a blessing, it's a blessing. So your attitude also to a large extent determines whether something is a blessing or whether it is not a blessing. I want to end off on that note. And I hope, inshallah, that we will make progress and that we're all going to make du'as that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must lift the veil so that we can get a proper understanding of why we are tested and how we should behave and what are the things that we can do, because each and every one of us will be tested. Some you might think more than others. No, you're all going to be tested almost right up to your limit. It might look like some people will be tested more than others. No, they just tested differently. So we must all make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must assist us. So to give us the tools of how we can actually manage these things, and not let it turn us further away from Allah, but rather be a means of getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On that note, I want to say shukran to all of you. And the last thing that I do want to say, I think we are running now into too close to Isha. I'm going to suggest that we start at 1:15. Just one or two comments quickly. Can I hear whether that's acceptable to people or not? At 8:15. Okay. There's one. Okay. I'll take that as a yes. Alhamdulillah. I've got more than one indication that we will start at 8:15, inshallah. And we're going to ask Muhammad Fasih to make dua for us, inshallah. Muhammad Fasih. Yeah, you could be attending to something else. Sidi Yunus, tafadhal.
الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا وخاتم النبيين خير الخلق لا رحمة للعالمين سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم. يا ربنا لك الحمد، يا ربنا لك الحمد، يا ربنا لك الحمد. اللهم إنا نسألك عافية ورضاك والجنة ونعوذ بك من سخطك والنار. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله
رب العالمين. Shukran, Sidi Yunus. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all of you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you all safe, remove your difficulties, and I'll tell you about that one next week. But may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you the mechanisms of how to cope with whatever you find difficult in your life, you and your family. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.